Welcome to This Just In, the show bringing you the latest advancements in healthcare, strategy, innovation, and public policy. And now, for the fastest voice in healthcare, here's your host, Justin Barnes.
Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to This Just In. I'm your host, Justin Barnes. In these segments, I'll bring the latest advancements in healthcare, strategy, innovation, and public policy. As always, we're broadcasting from the This Just In studios on the Business Radio X network, as well as the Healthcare Now radio network. For this episode, my 251st episode, we have a very interesting first-time guest, Wes Seller, CEO and co-founder of CaringWays. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks, Justin. So glad to be on the platform with you.
You got it, my friend. And we're connected by a good friend of ours, Kevin Lake. Kevin is just, he's a good friend from Atlanta, very well connected. And he brought us together. So I love Kevin as a friend, and I'm grateful to get to know you, my friend, as well.
Yeah, thank you.
You got it. So your voice is new to my show. So for my audience, where'd you grow up, attend college, all that fun stuff?
Yeah, so I'm from a town just south of Nashville, Franklin, Tennessee. Like most healthcare executives, I'm a theater major undergraduate, and I say that with a chuckle a bit.
That's great.
But went to Ole Miss, studied theater, went to business school at Belmont, studied to get a hybrid master's of accountancy. Oddly enough, Justin, I rely more on my time in the theater more than my MBA, which is unique. I think part of that is learning to fail forward as an entrepreneur. That's a similar skill you get on stage. But that's a little bit of my background. Grateful to live in Nashville and be in the healthcare industry.
Very cool. And I will say you are the first theater major on the This Justin radio show.
Yeah,
so congratulations.
Right? Thank you, brother.
Very cool. So tell me a little about your background as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. So, a lot of stuff, a lot of blessings, a lot of growth in our lives really come from the Valley. During the downturn of 08, 09, I had to create a job for myself. I was in the real estate development world, and that was just contracting. And really found a unique business model in the healthcare space around energy. And I was able to scale it into about 500 hospitals, and really took that goodwill. It was a sell that I would make to the C-suite, and kind of took that experience and built a holding company with some partners that allows us to really kind of be a venture arm for various health systems, and creating new ventures that, they may have too much bureaucracy they can't get to on their own. And really, that's how we got to CaringWays.
Very cool. So I like to ask this question, certainly of serial entrepreneurs. In your opinion, what's the hardest thing about being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, it's interesting when you think about that, because I immediately go to feeling alone, and as an offshoot, being a bottleneck. A lot of times as the entrepreneur, you feel like it's all up to you, right? And you tend to think, then I need to be smart enough, strong enough, right place, right time. And therefore I need to make all the decisions. And it's a very, it's not a virtuous cycle. And so, you really have to embrace your teammates. You have to get out of the way a lot of times when you feel like I have to do it all. So that conflict is very tough to work through.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. And we're catching up off air, and you made me think of this because like 2 days ago, I literally was sitting there and thinking through different successes that I've had and why some are larger than others. Mm-hmm. And and there's a term that we came up with, or we just discussed, called lightning in a bottle. And we were able to capture that lightning in a bottle, even certainly with Mike, one of my previous ventures, Greenway Medical. And it's not about, and so to prove your point, it's not about being the smartest person or having the best widget, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. It's the synergies. It's the recipe that you bring all together. So it's going to take a good idea. It's going to take market opportunity. It's going to take maybe some regulatory favor. It's going to take, strong leadership. It's going to take good management. It's going to take really good team players and a lot of luck and a lot of faith. And, and in my world, I think your world as well, God's wind as well. There's so many forces and pieces that have to come together. And it's not just one, two, or even three pieces. It's a lot of different components. And so not to say, oh gosh, it's so hard. It's just, when you capture it, awesome. And you do want to taste it again. So you're going to look to create it. But going back to what you said, it's not on your shoulders. It should not overly stress you out. You've got to do the best that you can. I like to say, you got to work the hardest that you can, and then, let God do the rest. But you got to do what you can. God can't do what you can do, but you need to do what you can do, and then let him do the rest. I think that, you believe a little bit in that too. So
agreed 100%. Love that.
So where does your passion from healthcare come from?
So before I went to college, my father was diagnosed with cancer and ended up passing away.
Oh, sorry.
It's one of those medical conditions it's protracted, it's scary, it's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's unique for my story is about 90 days before he was ever diagnosed, by the grace of God,
wow,
my mom took a cancer rider policy out on our entire family just as a hunch. And there's a statistic, Justin, 42% of all cancer patients lose their life savings in 2 years.
Yeah, I see that.
And so my family got as close to that as we could be, but we were spared.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I take that with me, really, as I look at different healthcare ventures. It's just CaringWays is so applicable. But really understanding not just the clinical side of healthcare, but the curative side is really kind of where my passions come from.
Mm-hmm. I love it. And I mean, I have a great C-suite that listens to the show, but also a lot of the people, a lot of leaders in the industry, and also just people who make the industry happen on a daily basis. And so it's always inspiring to hear, what got you into healthcare? Why do you have such a drive? Because as you know, and everybody listening to the show, it's in healthcare. It takes a lot to get. We tackle big tasks, big problems every single day, and they sometimes get larger every day.
Yeah.
And so it takes a lot to get us out of bed. But so obviously, all of us have this burning desire deep inside to make a difference, and for different reasons. But it's really cool to hear.
Absolutely.
To hear reasons. So that's certainly part of it, I'm sure, but what's the driver behind creating CaringWays?
So I referenced that personal experience, and we were having a really interesting conversation a while ago with a head of strategy for a large health system. And they just said, hey, we write off a bunch of bills we don't collect as an industry. At the time, it's like 40 billion. And then they just said, you realize that medical debt for the consumer is, for the patient, it's a leading cause of bankruptcy. And really the narrative's broader than that, Justin. I saw a stat recently, we borrow 170 billion a year to pay for medical as a country.
Wow.
And so we started studying certain crowdfunding models at the behest of that health system, and found out, there's one big one that does $1.5 billion annually in medical crowdfunding, but there was no checks and balances. And so we thought, well, gosh, if we could create a healthcare centric crowdfunding platform that ensured that all the money given goes to pre-qualified medical expenses, then I think donors have even greater confidence to give. We give the patient then in turn peace of mind. And the real winner is the provider, because we unlock other sources of payment other than the household's ability to pay that bill. So, it's an alternative payment platform for a broad array of medical expenses.
Wow. So what type of care? I mean, I know we're catching up a little bit offline. What are some of the type of care settings that could be treatments or I know you talk about cancer, and there's been mental health, and what are some of the areas there?
So, when we started this, Justin, we thought in terms of like cancer and cardiac,
Hmm.
major surgeries, orthopedic, because when we provide crowdfunding, we provide funding not just for the bill where the narrative might be about affordability, but the friends and family can crowdfund those things like ride share, grocery delivery, food delivery, someone to clean your house so that when you're trying to navigate the journey, we can make life easier and relieve that financial pressure. So we're doing a lot around health equity and social determinants of health. But I've got to tell you, the one space that we were blind on was behavioral health, mental health.
Hmm.
Uh, but when we thought about it, it's like, oh my goodness, you cannot use typical crowdfunding for someone that's struggling with addiction because you're giving them liquidity at a time where they have a lot of temptations, right? And so giving them cash could cause them to do harm to themselves. And
Right.
so, in the mental health space, Justin, we've created a relationship through a third party entity that we have direct access to 400 providers. And as we raise funds for a patient, we send the money directly to treatment facilities for addiction and depression. And the cool thing is, we're allowing the loved ones to invest in someone's recovery that is fully trusted because we send the money directly to the provider in that space, and it's just really cool to see how we can play a small part in someone's road to recovery.
Absolutely. Very, very cool. So my show focuses a lot on best practices, industry strategies, and so forth. And you covered a little bit, but I mean,
Yeah.
what issues specifically in the healthcare industries are you trying to solve, or my audience can say, hey, that could be a interesting best practice, or I could institutionalize this somewhere in my care setting, or
Yeah.
bring it to my family or friends. What are some
Yeah.
thoughts there?
Thank you for asking. So to kind of give you some context, we do a lot of work with providers, of course, but we also have some really dynamic conversations in the payer space, in the large employer space. I had a fascinating conversation yesterday with the chief legal counsel for a large self-insured employer, and they're trying to create more of a benevolent culture, and they're doing their best, but at their best they offer high deductible health plans.
Right.
um, I would say best practices as it relates to us: one, we're not for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
um, there are some conversations we've had where people don't even want to acknowledge that healthcare is expensive. Like they don't want to talk about that. They just
Mm-hmm.
want to talk about the clinical aspect. We're not a fit for folks like that. But if you are interested in giving someone who's a patient who's navigating a medical journey, and you want to give them a tool that can provide ancillary support, and you want to embrace a culture where we care for one another, where you want to champion how you can more readily be your brother's keeper and you don't have to live across the street from them.
Mm-hmm.
We're a fit for those folks, but I would say best practices are you have to embrace that, cost is a factor. And we want to address that just like we want to address giving you the best care you can possibly get.
Wow, that's very cool. And you touched on this initially, but I do want to take a moment and think a lot of people in healthcare know this, but as consumerism really begins to take hold, and I hope actually I can touch on that topic here
Yeah.
in a little bit if we have time. But I think the number one cause of personal debt and personal bankruptcy are healthcare expenses. And you did mention that at a quick pace, but
Yeah.
I just want to make sure people understand that. That's why there's so many strategies for patients to be treated as consumers, and patients to see them as consumers, because you've got to get your hands around this, and it's only getting worse. Healthcare expenses saw this morning up 18% over the last year.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
So
And the beauty of it is, look, we're not a silver bullet.
right.
We have to be a tool, but if you can unlock that circle of care, and it be a tide that raises all boats and unlock that liquidity, the stories are great to embrace. And, there's more financial upside for everybody.
Yep. Excellent. And for those that may just join us a little late, my special guest today is Wes Sellers, CEO and co-founder of CaringWays. So Wes, when we're catching up off air, you mentioned something about the NFL. You have a cool story. What was that again?
Yeah, so partnerships are really important to us, where 1 + 1 can equal 4. As we began to navigate the mental health space, we really created 2 key partnerships. One is Fund Recovery, which is run by a dear friend, Ryan Kane. What Fund Recovery does, Justin, is they raise philanthropic dollars to scholarship people for behavioral health treatment. And so what we began to do with them is align a philanthropic dollar with the crowd-funded family dollar. And that way we can cover the cost of care for a broader group of people. Also, through Fund Recovery, we created a partnership indirectly with Hall of Fame Health. That's an entity that is in part affiliated with the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And the beauty of what Hall of Fame Health and the Pro Football Hall of Fame do is they really address stigma. That's really the biggest driver, killer, fill in the blank in the mental health and the behavioral health space, is that people don't realize it's okay to not be okay.
Right.
So if I've got Charles Haley, 5-time Super Bowl champion, saying, hey, I'm bipolar, right? And once I got that addressed, my life got better and yours can get better too. Or, hey, I dealt with addiction, and you don't need to be ashamed of it. You just need to address it. The value that they bring to this partnership is just so important. And so really it's one of those situations where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And we're doing a lot of great work with them. We're very blessed to be partnered with them.
Yeah. And I love that. And I love the fact that you brought up behavioral mental health, because as we were kind of catching up offline again, I had not a bout with it, not to any level probably most people are dealing with, but I mistakenly stayed behind in Hurricane Ian when he went up to Florida a couple of weeks ago, and it's supposed to hit 1,000, either 1,000 or 100 miles from where I was. They're just so far off the predictions. And I was in Sarasota, and it kind of hit just south of me. And I could not run it because I was actually initially supposed to go north of me. And so I was going to head south. And if I did do that, I would have been in the middle of it. But thankfully I was about 50, 60 miles from it. Still got a lot of effects, but nothing like Port Charlotte in Fort Myers received. So I'm very grateful and thankful. But I remember the next day standing in my living room, because I live on the water, and I had certainly form of PTSD, and I've served in the military 8 years and in the infantry, but I never had anything like I had dealt with. The next day after a hurricane coming through, I was certainly jolted. I certainly had a minor form of PTSD, and it was just something it took me many days to get through. And I still think back on it, and it's very traumatic. So, it is okay to not be okay. It's okay to say that you're not okay. And it's okay to seek help. And so I did want to pick a special moment here just to say that to everybody listening, it's okay to be not okay. So
absolutely. And I really appreciate that. Even in that, you've got a lot of listeners, a lot of people that hold you in high regard as a thought leader in the business side. And I know for many people, just to hear you say, hey man, I've been through this. I had my own. And, it wasn't a level 10, but it was meaningful.
Yes.
It just disarms everything. And that's what we need right now.
Absolutely. So thank you for that, Wes. So I like to focus my show also, not just best practices and best strategies, but also cool innovations and features and functions that might be coming out over the next 6 months to a year, or even 2 years from a company, and certainly here at CaringWays. So what's on the horizon for you guys in that regard?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking that. We're really excited about this. When we started our crowdfunding platform that's, baked in trust, it was focused on the individual. We kind of Forrest Gumped our way into this, this next piece that we're super excited about. But our ability to do the same thing, not just for the individual, but for a community, almost like from a pop health perspective. So we were very fortunate to be approached by Calais Campbell, an all pro for the Baltimore Ravens. And he said, "Hey, I want to use your platform to generate matching funds so that we can cover 3 months of mental health therapy for inner city African American youth in Baltimore." We said, cool. And so what he did is he put up $20,000, and in short order, we were able to match those funds. We created a partnership with Belmont's Big Data Collaborative that's backed by HCA and Change Healthcare to identify those neighborhoods in inner city Baltimore, not just zip codes, that have that demographic so that we could, get the money first and then identify and go to the people who need the care, and then really disperse those funds on an individual by individual basis to make a big impact in that community. And so, if you think of almost crowdfunding and a pop health or a health equity approach, it's a very powerful platform that we're building towards. We're doing studies on companies like Omaze that do crowdfunding for a group instead of an individual. And I think that this is something that we'll do in scale over time, and not just help the individual, but start to really support certain disease states, conditions, and populations.
Wow. Very cool. Kind of in that theme, one piece I like to try to call out if I have time, and I got a couple minutes here. So what about, the kind of vision for additional strategic partnerships? Like, what do you see maybe over the next 3 to 5 years? Hey, our strategy could fit well here, or this bridge could really work well for us as an organization. What are some thoughts there, or a thought there?
Yeah, I think one is we're beginning to be introduced to donation amplification partners. This can be foundations, family offices that are really interested in multiplying their gifts with our for-profit crowdfunding dollar that we're generating. So that's a big space for us. I think there's some smart partnerships in the payer space that we really need to go after as we're able to credibly address SDOH topics. So I think that there's some smart partnerships too. And then I think that going deeper with influencers like the NFL, there's some other Hall of Fames that we're in conversations with right now that could really bring about awareness and reduce stigma. But those are the ones that come to mind.
Love it. Love it. I got rapid fire 1-minute answers.
Yeah.
If listeners could remember one thing about your company, what would you want it to be?
That we remind people that in the midst of their battle, they're not alone.
Oh, that's strong.
Thank you, brother. Yeah.
I love that.
It's not transactional. It's not about the money.
Yeah. Very cool. And so since I have time, I always love to ask this question of my guests, certainly the entrepreneurs and the deep thinkers. This is great. And you're going to fit right in here. And this has now become its own segment for my radio show. Where do you go to get or be inspired?
We go to our patients that we support and struggle. I got a single mother of 4 who got in a car wreck and is facing a $50,000 financial struggle. And she wakes up every day with a smile on her face and a can-do attitude. I've got a guy named Scott Williams right now who's fighting stage 4 glioblastoma that recently got on the Natchez Trace and rode 400 miles to raise $70,000 for cancer research. It's the people we serve that are our sources of inspiration. If they can fight cancer, if they can fight mounting debt, if they can, take on mental health, why can't I wake up every day and say, how do I keep fighting for them? They're who we look up to.
Wow. That's strong, Wes. What a way to close the show, my friend.
Thank you, brother.
Very, very cool. And you're in Nashville today?
I am. Yeah.
Cool. Well, stay safe up there, my friend. You've been a phenomenal guest. It was great to get to know you. And thank you, Kevin Lake, for bringing us together.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll track each other and look forward to seeing you hopefully at one of these trade shows. Will you be at HLTH Health Conference in November by chance?
Yeah, that we're targeting that. So
Okay.
I'd love to see you when you're out there while
Yeah.
you're signing autographs amongst your other fandom. I'd love to shake your hand, man. This is great work that you're doing.
Cool. Thank you, brother. Absolutely. Look forward to it. And again, thank you so much, my friend. And thank you to everybody for taking the time out of your schedule to join us today. As always, you can please tune in weekdays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Pacific. You can track me on Twitter at HIT Advisor and use the hashtag ThisJustinRadio so we can respond to your comments from the show. If you miss any of this episode or want to hear more, all of my shows are posted at Apple iTunes, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, and TuneIn. And also, as you've recently heard, we'll be redoing the justinbarnes.com website. So look forward to seeing some of those assets roll out over the next 4 to 6 weeks. And if you're going to be at the health conference, please make sure you look me up. Either text me, hit me up, DM me on LinkedIn or Twitter. Would love to see you. I know we have a lot of people in this industry all rowing in the same direction. So let's certainly stick together and have fun and obviously serve, like you just heard well from Wes. Thanks, everyone, and stay safe.